worry, 'cause it's working for me.
Oh, nah, nah, nah.
It's working for me.
And I believe
It's working for me.
Last time say I don't have to worry, no.
I don't have to worry, 'cause it's working for me.
Trust and believe.
It's working for me.
And I believe
It's working for me.
'cause he's intentional.
He's intentional.
He's intentional.
He's intentional.
He's never failed. Hello, hello, hello. We are back, good people. Did you enjoy the worship? Did you enjoy what God is bringing to us, reminding us that He is intentional? Everything is working out for our good. Why do we worry? Why do we have to fear when God is in total control? The Bible says that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. So, as believers, we are called towards His purpose, and we can believe in a bright future and know that God is in total control. That is exciting to know that we don't have to carry the burden. God is carrying it for us. So listen, if you believe that God is carrying the burden for you today, I want you to write in the comment box, because I want to make sure you guys are awake and you are alert. I want you to write in the comment box, God is in control. Do me a favor, write in the comment box, God is in control. If you know that God is in control and He's taking care of everything concerning us. So, guys, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker, because I know you guys are anticipating what we are doing, what we have going on tonight, and I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker tonight. So we have, if you've been to any of Genesis leadership events, then you know, you're familiar with this face, you're familiar with this name. But I do want to introduce Mr. Kingsley Grant to you guys tonight. So he's going to come and teach us, guys, how to pivot in a pandemic. Listen, how we can make the quick shift to be able to move forward and continue to do the things that God is calling us to do. So listen, grab a pen, grab a paper. I want you to take notes tonight. Tonight is imperative that you take notes so you can ask all the questions that you want tonight, okay? And so we can answer your questions tonight by you just writing it in the comment box. So I see a couple of responses here. Faye Zaka says God is in control. Marvelyn says God is in control. Neil says God is in control, and he has like 10 exclamation points. Carlene Facey, God is in control. God is in control, everybody. So I'm excited for what we're about to do tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let Mr. Kingsley Grant come on in and share with us. So Kingsley, come on in. We're excited to have you. Welcome back. Happy to have you.
Thank you so very much. It's great being here, and I'm excited about having an opportunity to speak and share with a great group of people who are actually now listening, joining in, and participating, and also commenting. So great seeing you. We're going to talk about how to pivot in a pandemic. Need I remind you of what this has done for us, right? Shelter in place, locking down, and all of that. So you know, that's really what we've been living for the last few months and what that's been like. But the question is then, what do we do? What do we do now that we are in this pandemic? I want to say this quote by Charlie Chaplin: "Nothing in this life is permanent, not even our troubles." Let that sink in for a second. Think about what's happening in your life right now. It feels permanent, doesn't it? It feels like tomorrow the lights will not shine. It feels dark and possibly heavy. It feels like you have hit the pause button. And in some cases, possibly feeling as if you hit that stop button. But nothing in this life is permanent, not even our troubles. We are living in a time right now where we see a lot of things happening. We just mentioned the pandemic. We are seeing the riots and what has happened because of the death of a man that was basically killed. And we saw the whole nation is riveted on that. And so the rioting is taking place, but even that is not permanent, right? It is something that will pass, but it doesn't feel that way right now. And we get it. The question is, how do we respond to that? Life is filled with disruptions. And as Nikki mentioned earlier, this is something you might want to write down. If you're taking notes and you're following, you may want to even put this as a something in your social media. Life is filled with disruptions, and disruptions are filled with life. And you will see in a few moments what I mean by that. But life is filled with disruptions. But here's the key. Do not abort. Do not abort. One of the best ways for me to kind of show this or explain this is think about a pregnancy. In that pregnancy is a disruption. It's a disruption to that family, but mainly to that woman, that mother carrying that child, because she now have to experience bodily disruption. It's not permanent, but she now in her sleep. I remember we've had, my wife and I have had 2 children, and in her pregnancy, it wasn't funny then, but imagine her trying to sit down and having to take about 2 or 3 different get in there, and to get up is almost like, okay, let's get the crane. Now she's gonna kill me on saying that, but it's one of those things. And sleeping is not the same, right? Diet for that mother is not the same, but that's a disruption to her cycle, to her quote normalcy of life. But in that disruption, what's there? Life. And that's why if we are in the stage of pandemic right now, we want to remember that it's disrupting our lives, but we have to look for where is the life in all of that? Where's the life in all of that? One of the biggest disruptions in this world basically happened on the cross. And I'm not going to be preaching here. I want to just mention that because you probably have at least at some point heard about this, seen it. But this is one of those game changer for life. When there was a disruption occurred 2,000 plus years ago. In that disruption, life existed. Life was. Without that disruption, we would not have eternal life. For those who are believers, so if you're not a believer, if you're not a Christian, it's okay. Just kind of walk with me on this and think about this for a second. In that which looks so permanent for the disciples, for people who loved Jesus, his family, his mother, his stepdad, his brothers and sisters, right? They thought, well, he's dead. It's permanent looking. And people went back to life and their own way of living. But in that disruption, life was. It did not look like that, right? It didn't look like that. This pregnancy, it didn't look like that. Who would ever thought in this moment life would be there? But if we have this lens through which we're looking at today, even with the death of George Floyd, right? Who knows that may be that disruption, unfortunately for that family, but it may be the life-given for something that is supernatural, something that we've been waiting for and looking for. How do we know? But we do not want to abort by rioting and destroying the life that could come. So aborting, it looks like what's happening right now. It's not the answer. It's not the answer. That's aborting the process. So we have to be careful we don't find ourselves aborting because of the pandemic. We want to find where is the life in that. And if you're going to pivot and allow this to work for you, you've got to look for where is the life in all of that. Then I say much more about this, right? You know, the disruptors of our market. Uber disrupted the whole taxi and transportation industry when it comes to moving people around, right? Airbnb, of how people traveled and spend their time. Instead of hotels, they have homes. So we know about Airbnb. Need I say much about Netflix? Because people have been Netflixing out. I believe the numbers of the millions of people who are watching more or consuming more television and movies and Netflix It's amazing. And maybe Uber Eats, right? Those of you who actually are using that as a way of not leaving your house. But these are disruptors. But what happened is most times a disruption comes at the time it does, people begin to think it's permanent and they can't see a way out. So they push back against it and aborting the process, because in this disruption, how many businesses have been formed? How many ideas have come? How many people have now started new things and gone deeper in their lives with technology and their skill sets because of what Uber has done, because of what Airbnb has done, because of what Netflix have done? It's given them ideas that they may never have had before. So disruptions are not bad if we do not abort, right? Now we have, of course, coronavirus, all right, COVID-19. It's disrupted everything that globally, what we've known. It's disrupted our lives, right? It's changed the landscape of how even today, here we are right now through online, through Zoom, basically having this conversation. I'm sharing with you, and how many people are now able to tune in from the convenience of their home. You know, for me, I'm a psychotherapist in training. So I'm a counselor, and I have counseled multiple, literally thousands of people over the years, right? And I've been thinking about moving most of my work online, but my coaching, because I also coach people in the business sector, that operational leaders who want to become more successful in what they do. So I use coaching, but this is the medium at which I have operated. So here is people now in the convenience of their own home can get the help they need. So this coronavirus have possibly allowed people who could never or who may not have actually had the chance to leave their home to go see a therapist like myself or a coach or a doctor. They can get that right away. So a disruption has caused life. Even the coronavirus, as bad, as terrible as it is, yes, we mourn the loss and we grieve. We pray for those who have lost loved ones and those who are unable to go to see people in the hospital. It's tough. It's hard. It's painful. But in that, don't lose sight, my friend, that in that there's also life. We've got to look for it. We've got to find it. Okay? Now, I love this cartoon because it captures us for us, you know, when people think about dating, and this, I'll admit, this is not how I saw 2020 going. What about you? I'd love to hear what your feedback is, and make some comments and maybe have some questions later on. I'm gonna give you a chance to ask some questions that you might want to ask as I share. But did you think of 2020? I heard someone say, you know, I want to go back to bed and wake up and start 2020 again. Have that been your narrative? Some people have said, man, I want to go to bed and not wake up until 2020 finishes. To me, that is not the attitude. That is not the attitude. We've got to be able to embrace our disruption and find a way to let it work for us, because we could miss an opportunity of a lifetime. How do you know that your best hope is not inside this pandemic? How do you know that your skills that you've been honing will not be now used in this pandemic time like never before? How do you know that you will not meet somebody, the love of your life? Or, you know, I was listening to a program recently, a podcast, and this person was talking about dating. And they were talking about how, you know, people in the olden days before my time, maybe yours as well. But remember, if you could remember this, maybe some of you who are at that stage of life, you used to write something called letters. Do you remember that? Letters? Yes. Where you use a pen and a paper, and you would send letters to somebody and wait for them to respond. And maybe that person is somebody you met. We had a thing called, you know, I grew up in Jamaica, so we had a thing called pen pal. You may not, you know, of course, you'd never heard about pen pal. What's that? Pen pal, right? So we had this thing called pen pal. And pen pals were people you meet who you never meet them physically. So you would actually then have to write letters back then. and the person would exchange information and tell you about themselves, and you tell them about yourself, and on it goes. And you would say, oh, I have this pen pal in Europe someplace, or in in Africa someplace, or in Jamaica someplace, or in the US someplace, but you've never met them. But through writing, you begin to describe and you build relationship, and you had a chance to get to know somebody. And really, it's old school, but it allowed us to go deep. I wonder if this is now an opportunity to do dating. I'm not in a dating space, right? Of course, I'm married, so that's not for me, but for you, right? It may give you a chance to really go deep and not rush dating as people nowadays do, right? Meet, and we are today, hi, hello, and we are next, of course, whatever else happened afterwards. We won't go there right now, but you know what I'm talking about. So we have these new things that are happening, and what's supposed to call, new norms, right? The new normal. Now, what is that? Imagine there's some people who are living our lives, what we're living right now, or who were living that kind of life years ago in different parts of the world. I remember seeing people in some parts of some countries, we wear masks everywhere they go. They would be masked up when they leave home, and that was their normal. For us, it's like our new normal. They're looking at what's normal about that. I mean, what's new about that? I'm sorry, what's new about that? That's how we've lived our lives all this time. So what are you talking about? So we now hear this term, the new normal, and people kind of get freaked out about it, because the very term implies there's something you have to now be scared of, worried about, because you might be wondering, am I prepared for this new normal? Am I going to survive this new normal? What is in this new normal? And on it goes. It can be scary when the term is used, but what is that anyway, right? Here's what's never new about anything we experience in our lives. It's this principle of everything we experience in life. We've got to have this constant, learn to adapt. And Joe Iguana, right? Our friend Joe Iguana says, hey, just learn to adapt. Learn to adapt to your surroundings. That's a skill set in emotional intelligence that I teach about so often when I do training of leadership training. I talk about this idea of people who are highly emotionally intelligent, given the same circumstances you are given, find a way to navigate that and come through and succeed when others failed. Why? Because they have a high degree of emotional intelligence and they learn to adapt. And Joe Iguana would say also, learn to adjust. Learn to adjust. When you have these things in place, my friend, you're able to better navigate pandemics and pivots much easier. And I'm gonna share with you in a few minutes about how to do that. So hang in there, and make sure you also are kind of sharing with us what your takeaway so far is from what I presented. Now, what is normal anyway? What is normal? Can anybody define that? Maybe you might want to write that inside of the chat and engage with us. What's your thoughts? What's your definition of normal? Who decides what's normal? We hear that many times, right? But who decides that? Because what might be normal for you may not be normal for me. So normal is a relative term, right? It's not true for all people at all places at all times. It's not universal. It differs. So what is normal anyway? And if we don't know what our normal is, how are we going to do new normal? Right? If we don't know what our normal is, how are we going to do new normal? Well, I'm going to help you to figure that out tonight. So we're going to get there, right? So what is new normal? What is normal anyway? I love what Maya Angelou says. She says, if you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. That's worth a second read, isn't it? If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. Being normal is vastly overrated, wouldn't you say? How many of you would agree with me so far that what I've said about being normal, right? Whether it's a quote by Maya Angelou or it is this quote, being normal is vastly overrated. How many of you would say, you know what? Probably that's true, right? So let's hear from you. I mean, engage with us. Would you agree? Would you agree that being normal is vastly overrated? Because here's a problem. Here's a problem. This is normal. Now, do you want to be one of those? Meaning that everybody walking in the same direction, almost the same foot forward. Everybody, I mean, most people, they're looking alike, dressing alike, walking to the drum beat of their normalcy. I mean, this is not, if you're going to succeed, you got to be able to stand out, because who is different here? I mean, of course, if you look close, you can see difference in people, but from a distance, everybody looked to be the same drum beat. And are you marching to the same drum beat like everybody else? In this pandemic, when others, I wouldn't say everybody, but when people are freaking out and are becoming anxious and depressed, are you also joining in? You know, I can go back to what's happening in the rioting right now, right? What I don't like about her mentality, I mean, everybody moves to the same drum beat. My friend, if you're going to succeed in life, especially in this pandemic, you cannot do groupthink. You cannot do groupthink when everybody think alike, act alike, walk alike, look alike. That doesn't work. That's not how you become successful. That's not how you pivot. You've got to stand out. You got to find your unique selling proposition, right? Or you have to look for your unique superpower. What is that? What is that for you? And if you don't know what that is, you will just be like everybody else and be normal. And normal is vastly overrated. Normal does not set you apart. Normal does not win the game. Normal does not win in life. But you've got to then embrace the disruption. Embrace the disruption. It allows you, when you embrace it, to think about things differently. When you embrace the pandemic the way it is, right? And try to find a way, how do you navigate this? You have to begin by to think about things differently, other than how everybody else is thinking. And I want you to say this with me and begin right now. I am not normal. Go ahead and say that, or even think it out loud or write it down someplace. I want you to, if you take away anything tonight, take away this. I am not normal. Number one, my friend, God did not create you to be like everybody else. He created you to stand out. He created you to stand out. So I am not normal, right? I am uniquely formed. I have qualities and personalities and thumbprint that nobody else have. So in a good way, I'm not normal. And I don't want to be normal. You know, I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. I am not normal. Are you? Are you? So here's what happened then, what we got to learn how to do. And I believe this is so important even right now as I was preparing for this talk. I'm thinking about this idea. People are in reactionary mode when it comes to pandemic, when it comes to events or something that happened, like what happened unfortunately, to George Floyd. People are in reactive mode. They have these knee-jerk reactions that allow them to make mistakes, bad decisions, right? Well, when I wrote my book, The Intelligent Leader, Succeed Where Others Failed, I talk about this idea that reaction is not going to help you, because you need to learn how to make good decisions, right? And you're not going to make good decisions when you're reacting. What good decisions are being made right now by those people who are rioting? It was a bad decision that was made by that cop. And I will not minimize that. He actually killed that brother. No question about that, right? But the reaction to that is knee-jerk reaction, where people are destroying their own properties and their own lives and livelihood. Reaction is never good. It's always negative. Let me give you an example. Say you go into the doctor and the doctor says to you, calls you and say, hey, Kingsley, whatever your name is, of course not Kingsley, unless it's Kingsley, go ahead and put Kingsley there, right? Hey, Kingsley, how are you with the medication I prescribed? And if you say to the doctor, Doc, you know what? Man, I'm reacting. Is that good news or bad news? it means something is not going right. The doctor will not want to hear that, will say, oh, well, we've got to change that medication. So reaction is never good. We need to learn how to respond. And I talk about that in my book as well. How do you respond to life situation? You've got to have what I call the ability to recognize your emotion. What's driving that? I did some posts on my social media. If you're following me on social media, you may have seen my posts, which I talk about the idea of anger and how what's behind anger. And anger is really a secondary emotion, right? It's not primary, because behind anger is fear, is hurt, is frustration. Those are the main emotional drivers of anger. People are fearful of something that's ahead, and they have no idea how it might work out. They're hurt by something that was happened to them, past tense, and then they're hurt. They're frustrated by what's happening right now because they're not getting the results they were hoping to get. So frustration is present, fear is future, and hurt is past. So when we are responding, we want to know what our emotions are. And then when we identify our emotion, I talk about the 3 R's. We've got to learn how to regulate. We've got to learn how to regulate our emotion. We've got to learn how to reflect on it. We've got to give ourselves time. I call it the 30-second rule, right? The 30-second rule, which says, regulate your emotions, recognize and regulate your emotions. Then you want to reflect on what's happening. And don't trust your first instinct. Normally it's wrong. You want to find out what's a secondary meaning to this whole thing. So you want to regulate, reflect, and then you respond. Respond is always a better, because now you said to the doctor, I'm responding well to the medication. He or she says, good news, keep on taking that medication, right? Isn't that how it goes? Okay, so my friend Tony Robbins, friend, I'm just using the word very loosely here, because you imagine of course, on everywhere we go now, social media. Oh, I have 5,000 friends. Oh, how many friends do you have? Oh, I have 10,000 friends. How many friends do you have? Right? Come on, we don't have 10,000 friends. So when I said Tony Robbins is my friend, I'm using that very loosely. But anyway, that's beside the point. He says this: change a question you ask yourself. If you're going to pivot properly, change a question you ask yourself, right? If you do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always gotten. Isn't that true? Isn't that true, right? If you do what you've always done, you always get what you've always gotten. And I love that. Now, I love what Clayton Christensen says here. Without a good question, a good answer has no place to go. Ponder that for a second. If you don't start with the right question, especially in a pandemic, you're not going to have a good answer, is not going to find its way to the surface. So you've got to have a good question. So the problem sometimes is we don't start with a good question and we never get a good answer. So here is a good question to ask in this pandemic. The question is, what does this meaning this pandemic, this COVID-19, what does this make possible? Sit on that for a second. Write that down. Ask yourself, sleep on it, and ask deeply, what does this make possible? And look for all the positive responses. That's what Uber did. That's what Netflix did. That's what Airbnb did. They ask, what does this idea of people traveling so much and wanting to stay at hotels that they don't like, they want more space, what does this make possible? Boom, Airbnb. What does it make possible for people to get a ride on their phone, just call a car up and be picked up where they are? Boom, convenience, right? So that's how it is. What does this make possible? When you ask a question, my friend, normally you have options given to you, because when you don't ask a question, the right question, you won't have these options. You have options to make a choice, take a chance, and make a change, right? And I won't elaborate on that because I want to get through tonight. We have a limited time and we started behind time. So I want to make sure I make up the grounds and get everything covered. So I'm going to kind of push through this right quickly. So imagine the coronavirus. What does this make possible? Imagine mental health. If you're in the mental health space, if you're in the financial space, if you're in the physical health space, if you are in the sanitizing everywhere space, right? If you are in more people online in technology space, it has made all that possible. So imagine you, what is it you could do in any of this space? See, if we don't react, we can find life in disruptions, because these are life for people who have these skills, right? So life is being birthed in a disruption called coronavirus, in this disruption called COVID-19. Life is being birthed, but we've got to look for it. We've got to find it, right? The cross, again, I mentioned the cross earlier. People had to look to the cross and find life, right? Pregnancy, wait on the pregnancy. As much as the inconvenience and everything, life will come. Do not abort. So what is your skill set? So I want you to think about this for a second. If you were to list all the things that the problems created by the coronavirus, list all of those and then see where your skills match up, right? Don't run after something if you don't have what it is to support it. You don't want to do that. So here's 3 things I want to give you. I want to kind of wrap things up with you and give you tonight. 3 ways to go about doing this. First, you've got to create a new hive. Find a new hive, a hive that is producing, a hive that has honey, a hive that brings forth money. No, I'm not. Okay, it sounds good. I just had to say it, right? So I find a new hive, meaning that you got to surround yourself with the right people, because where you are right now in this pandemic and what you're feeding on right now, more than likely there are people who are just like yourself. Nothing bad about them. It's not a, some kind of a put down here or insult on those people. No, it's simply saying, if you want to pivot in the pandemic, you've got to find people who are pivoting, but are people who are digging deep, people who are asking the right question, people who are seeming to find ways to say, hey, here's something new I can do. Here's something new I can do. I have a podcast called the Kingsley Grant Show, available on iTunes and all your major platforms. I interviewed someone recently, and this person have a business, and this person makes for, the mask you're wearing, and how the mask was causing all this pain for the medical professionals who would wear it all day, and behind their ears would get sore. So he thought about something. Why not create a clip that the medical professionals could clip to their hats or the things they wear on their head? And I'm not a medical profession. I'll just call it the things they wear on their head. And you can probably tell me what that is later on and educate me on that. But anyway, he realized if he could make a snap-on clip, so you could always have that, put it on your hat, on the thing on their head, and put the mask elastic around that, it would be more convenient. So he came up with the idea, boom, he rushed to market, and this thing just took off like crazy. So what he does now is put logos on those small little round snap-ons and sell that. So he has a booming business because he found life in a disruption. How about you? Secondly, deep dive. So we have to then find a new hive. Our second thing is to go deep, take a deep dive. A deep dive simply means look at what it is, your skill sets. I love soccer, so I'm choosing soccer as a skill set. I wish I could play still as I used to play. Man, can I just tell you, I was really good. Yeah, I was, man. I was good at soccer. Yeah. No, I was pretty good. I was pretty good. But here's a side note. I remember, playing soccer for my high school, playing soccer nationally, playing soccer here in the state. I mean, in Jamaica, I played nationally. Came to the States. Nationally mean for my school, not for the national team, of course. I mean, I think I could have made it there if I had the support from my dad. Another story I'll tell you another time. Ask me, and I'll tell you about that. But then I came to the States, went to school here, played for my school, played for my college, went and played in the national playoffs. So I'm pretty good. Okay. So give me some thumbs up and say, Kingsley, you're good. It seemed like you were good at soccer. Okay, we got that out of the way. But look at your skill set. What are your skill set? Don't go creating something to match what's out there. It won't work. You won't have the energy, the synergy, the motivation. You will run out of gas. Find something where your skill, go deep. Look at the skill sets you have. For me, I love to talk, right? It's a skill set I have. I love to do some graphics here and there, but I don't want to spend much time on that. I love doing what I'm doing here. This is a skill set. So I look for opportunities like this. I look for opportunities like my blog or my podcast, the Kingsley Grant Show, and use that and address what the pandemic has created. Speak about those things, write about those things, help people solve a problem that has come as a result of that. That's your skill set. What is your skill set? And then begin to, so that's going deep and find what that is. And then see the problems that's created, you're going to find a solution. Your skill set is going to provide a solution. So number one, find a new hive. Number two, take a deep dive. And number three, go live. Go live. Go live with whatever you've come up with. And just go live and just go after it. Just go after it where your passion leads you. Just don't hold back. Begin to let people know this is what you're going after. Broadcast it. Post about it. Write about it. Speak about it. Be interviewed about it. Just let it be flown out of your system, whatever that is. Because people are having so many problems right now. Imagine you addressing some of those problems with your skill set, and nobody can do it like you. Nobody can do it like you, my friend. Only you can do what you do the way you do it. Never forget that, because I am not normal, neither are you. So here's how to pivot in the pandemic. 3 ways I just said as we wrap things up. Choose a new hive, do a deep dive, then go live. But remember what Joe Iguana says, learn to adapt, learn to adjust. And like what I've said, disruptions have in it life, right? Life is filled with disruption, but disruptions are filled with life. Go find it, and you will be able to pivot well in this pandemic. What questions do you have? You can write those in. We may not be able to answer them tonight, but we can actually respond to them in a watch party or online. We can just fill that in. I can do that and make myself available. But what questions do you have? And I'm gonna kind of now, in a sense, turn this back over to Nikki so that she can take it from here. If you have questions, we can talk about that and answer those questions if we have time. If we don't, then we have to just say, hey, we'll catch you maybe on the replay, and I'll be glad to respond in your posts on social media. So this is, I'm out. Here it is. I'm finished with this. So thank you for taking the time to watch and be with us tonight with me as I share this portion. So I turn this back over to our amazing host and incredible leader of LogIn 2, Miss Nikki.
Oh, Kingsley, thank you so much. That was phenomenal. I know everybody enjoyed themselves. Thank you so much for this information. I was writing down everything, and I'm like, yes, this is how I'm going to pivot in this pandemic. I'm not playing any games. I'm ready. So thank you, Kingsley. Thank you so much. So guys, listen, if you have any questions, please do us a favor and comment your questions in the comment box below. Okay. I want to see if I can I can answer any of those questions for you. But if you have any questions, comment in the comment box below. Let's see if I can pull any of them up really quick. Somebody said they posted a question earlier. I'm so sorry. Let's do this. Kingsley, they have a couple of questions. So I'm okay with reading those questions to you. And if you'd like to answer them, we can do it that way if that helps.
That's perfect.
Okay. Perfect. So Marvelyn wrote a question, but she said she wrote it earlier. So guys, the things are going so fast, so you have to go back and write the question in the comment box. So Pastor Facey says, what are some of the things that tend to limit people from achieving their dreams?
Limiting beliefs, right? Scarcity mindset. Because sometimes what happens, we don't believe in ourselves as we ought to. We allow other people to construct for us how we should behave and how we should act. And sometimes it's understandable because we don't have the support system they given from us from our upbringing that believed in us and tell us we are okay, we can do it, and give us a chance to practice. So it keeps us back from fulfilling our dream. So our limited belief, our mindset, the number one thing really is our mindset. You know, what mindset do we have when it pertains to us achieving certain things, right? If we believe sometimes what the system says and puts limitation on us because you're not smart enough, you're not educated enough, you didn't do enough school, trust me, those things cannot be barriers. They can be an advantage in some setting, but not in today's world. Today's world is based upon results. So if you can bring results, find a problem and solve that problem and stay with it and don't abort, you will be able to fulfill your dream. And listen, it's never too late. Never too late. when I went back to school for my graduate degree, I was in my 40s. And I'm thinking, I spent 3 years not going for it because I'm thinking, oh, I'm too old. Why now? I can't be bothered. And you know what? I almost abort. But I had people around me to support me and encourage me. And I went back and got my master's degree, first in my family to achieve that level. And of course, have other accreditation credentials, right? But here's the point. I had a dream. And my dream is to inspire people to find hope. And with God's help, I'm going to do that. So we have to change our mindset. It's a great question, Pastor Facey, and thanks for asking. But that's where we start.
Awesome. Listen, Kingsley, that is so inspiring. As I told some of my team as well, I'm back in school as well. And you know what? I think this was just this pivoting in this pandemic. It's actually been a really good thing because it has encouraged us to pursue our dreams again. So guys, don't stop dreaming. It's never too late. You can always go back to school. You can always go after that dream again, even if it didn't work the first time. Sometimes you got to just reroute and figure out what the next step is. Okay. Kingsley, we have another question for you. This question is from Neil. And Neil says, with the information overload about deaths and numbers rising at a rapid pace, how can we avoid not losing our cool and getting depressed during the pandemic? Wow, that's a great question.
It is a great question. Here's what I look at, and this, I wanted to make sure I preface this very well, because I know one person dying is one too much in any situation. So I want to mention, I put that out there first. Here's what I find, that we have to realize death is part of our life. Unfortunately, and please hear me. I'm not being, hope it doesn't come off as being cold. I'm not, because I've lost my mom, I've lost my dad, I've lost my younger sister. So I've had death around me. I understand that. I've grieved those things. But here's what happened is, my question is, 100,000 people have died. What can I do about that? Basically, nothing really. I can pray for those individuals, those family members. I can grieve with them, but what can I do about that? To allow that to say, well, 100,000 people. So I would just simply say, stop tracking the death, because people are dying every day. Look at what can you do to somehow possibly solve a problem, because people are grieving. Could you speak to those people's lives? Could you go and assist them and find the energy to say, instead of being, about me and my depression and how I feel, what if I go and serve other people? Because people are dying around us, right? Like you just said. But if I look out the window of my eyes and say, how can I serve in their pain? So I find a solution. I have better use of my time and my energy, rather than sitting back and allow depression to sit in on me and render me powerless and useless. So now I'm not helpful. So I look at that and let that inspire me and drive me, not let it sap my energy and put me in depressive mode. Use it as a sail behind your windmill and say, let me look at this and rise up and find a way to be inspired to do something to help someone in this pandemic.
That is awesome, Kingsley. Thank you for that advice. And, just use the pain as fuel, guys. This is time for us to step up and speak up and make a difference. We have another question here. Tamika asks, how do you speak with someone who's depressed and feels hopeless right now?
It's a very, I would say, number one, first and foremost, try to assess the level of depression and possibly encourage them to get some professional help. I want to mention that heavily. It's Mental Health Month. I'm a mental health professional, and I find that we want to take that person, allow the person to get professional help if they're deeply depressed and really, basically not themselves as they normally are. That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, I would say, of course, you can be a friend and a support, and help that person understand that they're depressing over something that possibly may be scaring them and they may have no control over. So what happened is this: anxiety and depression are the same kind of family. And sometimes people they have this what if mentality, or, what if this happens? Well, So let's take that 4 steps, steps further. What if it happened? What can you do? And sometimes by writing out, what could I do? So if I get outside and it rains, what if it rains? Okay, I can take an umbrella and cover myself, or a rain, a rain apparel and cover myself. So I'm prepared. So what if I get out in the street and there's an accident? Do I sit there and just wait and wait and wait, or I find a way around it? So sometimes we have to speak to ourselves the right way. So I would say someone who's feeling very depressed, normally there's something informing them about what life is like for them. And it may seem permanent when it's really not. This too shall pass. I can do all things. Of course, if you're a Christian, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? What does this make possible is a great question. What does this make possible? So, but I would say though, sometimes the depression is so deep, you need medical attention, some probably prescription, or you need, you need therapy, so you can talk through some things that are helping you. I'm speaking to more and more people nowadays. I mean, my load have gone way up. I'm mainly the three things: stress, anxiety, and depression has been presented so often. But I find that I use the same approach and help so many people navigate and get through this, because it's really reframing what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and give them a better narrative that would serve them rather than work against them. It's a narrative that's driving their story. It's a story that drives their lives. And that story, most times, is a wrong story. So we need to find a better story to help us through our depression.
Kingsley, thank you so much. I mean, this has been so amazing just to get this information, to learn everything tonight. It looks like we're wrapped up on questions, but guys, listen, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out. Kingsley, what's the best contact information and where can they follow you on social media?
Thanks for asking, Nikki. You can, Kingsley Grant is where, just type in KINGSLEYGRANT, Kingsley Grant. My website is kingsleyggrant.com. And just type in Kingsley Grant and you go and Google. I worked hard to make sure I'm positioned on the first page and dominated all of that. So you won't have a hard time finding me on any social media platform. So it's Kingsley Grant all the way, baby. Come on now, Kingsley Grant. Go ahead. Say it.
That was amazing. Kingsley Grant, thank you so much. We appreciate you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
I know everybody enjoyed this. Let's give Kingsley some virtual claps in the comment box below. And if you have any questions, please reach out to him. Thank you so much again, Kingsley.
Thank you.
Now, guys, really quick, I need to know if that was amazing for you. If that was good for you, I want you to comment in the comment box below. This was good. I need to know if this was effective, if this was helpful. We just want to make sure that this information that we're bringing to you through LogIn 2.0 is really serving you in a very great way. So guys, give us some claps, give us some hearts, give us some thumbs up. Let us know that this information is a blessing to you. And this encourages us because then we know how we can continue to produce the content for the LogIn 2.0 virtual event. So if this was good, I want you to give me some virtual claps in the comment box for Kingsley. I want you to give me some thumbs up and some hearts on the video here so we can really support the man of God. And please go ahead and visit kingsleyggrant.com to get all of the information there. Okay, guys, so moving on, we are closing out. Was this good to you? If this was good, write in the comment box. This was good. Just to make sure that we are on the right page and we're in the right room. So I'm really excited, guys. I want to thank you guys again for tuning in and for sharing this. We're just going to close out. But before we do, we have a couple more things for you. We want to give you an opportunity to be blessed. We want to give you an opportunity to sow. So you guys can visit mygenesiscc.org and you can click on the Give Tithe area. There's a section there that says Give Tithe /offering. And then you can choose the Youth Initiative /LogIn 2.0. We can continue the work that we get to do and the work that we produce when you give to the ministry and you are a blessing to the ministry. So don't be afraid. Go ahead and sow a good seed into good ground so we can continue to produce great work. So you can visit mygenesiscc.org and then click on Tithe /offering, and then you can choose Youth Initiative /LogIn 2.0. So guys, go ahead and give your seat, and we're so grateful and thankful to have you tonight. But before we close out, we have two more things for you, so don't leave yet. I would just want to allow Pastor Facey to come on in and share a little bit with our guests.
Well, what a wonderful evening this has been. I want to thank Kingsley for the awesome job that he did. Kingsley, you always amaze me, and thank you for sharing, allowing the Lord to use you tonight. And I sure hope as you listened, you got some practical pieces that can help you. Because like I've always said, those folk that are part of Genesis regularly, you'll hear me say this, that in this time, there are amazing opportunities that God has sown around us. He's just put them there. They're like gold nuggets that we need to seize. And these things can make us great. And so this is not just a time to be depressed and stressed out. This is a time for new opportunities. And thank you for bringing that home tonight, Kingsley, in that powerful way. And I want to thank the team for the great work that they did tonight, and Nikki and Tamika and the entire team. And I want you to know that every month, LogIn 2.0 is broadcasting live. And we want as many of you as possible to be a part. You can subscribe on YouTube, and you can make sure that you're following us as well. And in so doing, you'll always know when we have things that are going. And I imagine at some point, hopefully soon, we'll be able to meet physically again instead of just simply in this virtual space. And we're looking forward to the time when we'll be able to get back together and do some other kinds of fellowshipping. So thanks again for joining us. And I'm just going to have you bow your heads with me briefly. And I just want to pray tonight. Father, thank you so much for speaking to our hearts. Thank you for the wonderful music that Minstrel brought tonight. Thank you, God, for your presence with us and Brother Kingsley in how he shared so clearly and so powerfully. Father, I just pray that you'll prosper his ministry. Bless him continually. May your favor surround him. Pray the same prayer for Minstrel. Pray the same prayer for the LogIn team, Nikki and Tamika. God, just wrap your arm of grace and favor on us. And may your church continue to grow and prosper. And for God, for all those who are listening tonight, I just pray a special blessing on them, whatever they might be going through tonight. I just pray, God, that they might feel your presence, they might see your direction, and they might seize the opportunities that you have placed around them. May they rise up with courage and pursue. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Thank you so much, Nikki. It's back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pastor Facey. Guys, yes, we are going to close out, and we're going to have Minstrel Arise come back and play us out for the night. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself, and we will let you know when our next event will be. But in the meantime, in between time, we thank you guys for tuning in and being here with us, and we're going to close you out in worship. You guys have a wonderful night.
Hey everybody, God bless you. LogIn 2.0, we are so glad to be with you again for another week. We know that this week is the theme of mental health. So we want you to know that God is intentional. Don't worry about tomorrow. Things might look a little shaky right now, but God knows what he's doing. What he said with his mouth, he will accomplish with his hands. Worship with us.
Intentional, never failing. I said all things are working for my good. He's intentional, never failing. Say all things are working for my good. He's intentional. He's intentional, and he's never failing. Never failing. Say all things are working for my good. He's intentional. He's intentional. And he's never failing. Never failing. He's intentional. working